In continuing our series on the top 10 questions asked on the offer to purchasing contract of brokers in charge, here's another one that comes up often is what's the deal with special assessments? A lot of times I have new agents who are not even familiar with a special assessment other than having heard it in class. And maybe they've now run into it in the first time in the field. And so they want to know, how do we handle this? Okay, well, first of all, let's define what a special assessment is. You look here in the definition section of the offer to purchasing contract, Form 2T, and you see it defines a special assessment as a charge against the property by a governmental authority, in addition to ad valorem taxes and recurring government service fees levied with such taxes, or by an owners association, in addition to regular assessment dues, either of which may be a lien against the property. So let's just do a couple of examples of that, and then we will move on. So let's say, for example, you live in an area that's going to be annexed by the city, and they're going to bring you water and sewer lines. Well, they're probably not going to do that for free. They're probably going to assess your property, maybe $7,000, maybe $10,000 to pay for that amenity. Now, you're still going to pay your regular taxes, but this one-time charge would be the special assessment. That's the way you often see it in regards to government entities. But then keep in mind that your homeowners association may have a similar type fee. So with an owners association, you often pay a monthly fee to maintain the common areas and things like that. But occasionally, if you're in a townhouse area where you have to replace the roofs, or if you have to replace the parking areas, they will do a special assessment for that one-time fee that only occurs every few years. These are examples of what special assessments are. So now that we've defined them, let's go forward and see how this contract addresses. Now, bear with me as I scroll forward, and you will get to see how these affect the buyer and the seller in the contract. So here's what it says in regards to buyer obligations. Buyer, if you're buying a property and you know that there will be a special assessment coming in the future. Now, how would a buyer know that a special assessment is coming in the future? Well, in theory, what they should do is the seller, the listing agent, should let them know that a special assessment has been proposed or considered. If you are a great buyer's agent, you may also check the minutes from the previous homeowner association meetings, and you might be able to see that they have discussed replacing the parking lots or something to that effect. So the buyer will take title subject to all special assessments that may be approved following settlement. Now, notice what it's saying there. Buyer, if you buy a property knowing that there are going to be special assessments in the future, or could you have relatively competently figured out that there were going to be special assessments in the future, you buy the property subject to that. In other words, if the seller told you that they proposed special assessments, don't come back to the seller after closing and say, hey, give me some money to cover this. Nope, you took the property subject to the special assessment. Take that into consideration in your offer. Now, that dealt with proposed assessments. Let's talk about if the assessment had already taken place. In other words, the work has been done. Maybe the bills have already gone out, or maybe not, but they're getting ready to go out. Notice what it says in what we're looking at here is in the section provision 8K. Provision 8 are seller obligations. So payment of special assessments. Seller shall pay in full at settlement all special assessments that are approved prior to settlement. Now, notice what that obligates the seller to do. And look, I don't care if this happened one day before closing or if it happened months ago. The seller is responsible, according to this contract, for all special assessments that are approved prior to settlement. And then notice what it says, whether payable in lump sum or future installments. So the example I gave you earlier about the water and sewer lines, oftentimes if it's going to be a large assessment, $7,000, $10,000, the city or county will allow you to break that up over 3 or 4 installments, but it doesn't matter. It was approved on whatever date it was, day one. In this case, we're assuming before settlement. So even though it was spread out over 4 years, according to this contract, because it was approved prior to settlement, the seller is responsible for that. And then it goes further to say, provided that the amount thereof can be reasonably determined or estimated, the payment of such estimated amount shall be the final payment between the parties. The seller does his best to make this payment prior to closing, or from closing proceeds in some cases. And that's the end of it, assuming that everyone was acting in good faith. So keep your eyes out on this. And agents, here's your pro tip on this. When it comes to special assessments, determine, hey, for my buyer, are there monies that going to need to be paid that will affect his ownership of this property, such as proposed assessments? And if you're a seller's agent, if you're a listing agent, you might want to check and make sure there are no assessments that are going to affect the seller's net on that property. He may be thinking he doesn't have to pay those future installments, but it clearly says here that he does. It could make a difference in thousands of dollars on what the seller's net is in those cases. So those are the relative paragraphs in regards to what happens with special assessments. Again, if you have any questions, put them in the comments below, and we will get back to you on those questions. Thank you.